Hello, everybody, and welcome to the rain-soaked world of Kamino. Here, on this water world's endless oceans, the Kaminoans have constructed marvelous cities that float above the water's surface, supported only by thin towers. Most famous for their cloning technology, which they used to create an army for the Galactic Republic. The Kaminoans are scientists, first and foremost. While I do not know the name of this particular location, it is a cloning facility of some kind. And currently, it finds itself under attack by the Separatists' droid army. In this gleaming hangar, providing a brief respite from the pounding rain just outside, we can see V-Wing starfighters. There are also spherical pod ships of Kaminoan design, and we can see some damage here. One of the V-Wings has sustained critical damage from the Separatist forces. Or rather, it seems one of those pod ships has actually fallen onto the V-Wing. Outside, Trident class assault vehicles lay waste to the cloning facilities buildings, and I will make sure to get a closer look at those a little later. Now, in my last trip to Star Wars Battlefront 2, I took on the role of a droid. Also, we can get a closer look at these pods here. Very sleek, as all Kaminoan technology is, with white and silver and glass being the predominant aesthetic motifs. And I received quite a bit of horrible bullying from you folks that watched that last video. I was called horrible words. I was called a clanker. I was called an oil guzzler. I was called a wirehead. Here we find ourselves in one of the many barracks of Kamino. The clones sleep in those elevated pods. And we have some Phase 2 clone armor here. But even with the assault of hate speech that was leveled against me in the last video, I come to you today with a gesture of peace. As you can see, I am playing as a clone this time. And as I replied to one of those comments on my last video, I think it's important to remember that when the war was over, clones and battle droids alike were both cast aside and destroyed by the Galactic Empire. Droid and clone alike were seen as disposable tools, fit only to die in a war. So I hope that, despite the many differences between the two groups, we can at least find some commonality in that sad fact. And as a sign of respect, I couldn't be anything but a clone for our exploration of Kamino today. It only seemed appropriate. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's return our focus to our exploration of Kamino. We can see a crashed Trident here on one of the landing pads. And the rain sweeping through the air in the seemingly never-ending tempests of Kamino. All the buildings slick and shiny with rain. We will brave that storm soon enough, but before we do, let's finish exploring this section of the complex. We have a small console here showing DNA, a human body, and some spheres, perhaps cells. And unfortunately, we cannot travel in the game mode that is accessible to us to play solo. So we will not see the true heart of the cloning operation, but we will see quite a few interesting things. So, emerging out into the wind and rain, we can see this large structure off in the distance is currently beset by 2 Trident ships. And mere meters away from us, another has landed on this roof. These Trident ships are equipped with devastating drills that can burrow through. Oh. And I'm not sure the source of that, but that ship has been destroyed. And they use these drills to burrow into buildings, as we can see here. And they can also be loaded with a group of droids that can serve as a boarding party, I suppose, and enter the hole created by the drill. That structure off in the distance has suffered critical enough damage to fall into the stormy ocean. I like the raindrops falling on our visor. Despite the severity of the storm, there's something comforting about being protected in our clone armor. Not actually wet and cold from the rain, but encased. And here we have a crashed LAAT, or perhaps shot while it was still on the landing pad. A low-altitude assault transport ship. This is an iconic vessel of the Clone Wars, often used by the Republic to transport clone troopers from Venator ships down to planetside, or to carry troops from place to place, or in space combat. They were a workhorse of the Clone Wars and saw heavy use in, I would presume, every battlefield that the Grand Army of the Republic fought on. The vistas of Kamino are absolutely beautiful. It's a shame that we have to be here to witness such destruction. But the sleek design of the Kaminoan cities, so elegant, even in the face of a constantly violent natural world, with spires and thin support struts, gently sloping clamshell buildings, and I'm not sure if you can hear my stomach growling. I have to apologize because it's been particularly aggressive today, and I don't generally think it's audible. When I edit these videos, I don't notice it. But today it is really making itself known, so I do apologize if you can hear it. But those thin towers that the Kaminoan buildings are built atop of, it's amazing how such spindly pieces of support structure can hold up such massive facilities. So we have found our way to the crashed Trident ship that we were looking at earlier. And we can walk up its leg here. I'm not sure how many of you have watched the Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars series, but these were pretty cool in that a lot of aquatic combat involving them. They have small blaster cannons mounted on the hull, and a large glass porthole. I'm not sure if this vessel is entirely a vehicle, as some of the separatist vehicles are, such as the AAT, or if it is actually a droid. For instance, some of the vehicles in the separatist army that seem to be vehicles at first anyways are actually droids, such as the Vulture starfighters or the spider droids. Here we have one of the native creatures of Kamino. I'm not sure the name of this beast, but we of course saw Obi-Wan Kenobi ride one of them during his trip to Kamino. In the original prequel movies. does make me wonder, thinking about where a creature like that would roost, where it would rest. On a planet like Kamino, are there islands on Kamino? As far as I know, it is entirely oceanic. But perhaps in some of the extended lore, we see land masses on Kamino that creatures like that might have lived upon. But perhaps they are capable of sleeping on or under the ocean's surface. We can appreciate the size of these Trident ships here. And let me see if I can get a look at the little doorway. Yeah, right there. That would be the portal where droids could emerge from the Trident vessel. After it, say, drilled into one of these large Kaminoan structures. Of course, the Kaminoans have seen a sort of resurgence in Star Wars lore in recent years, with their cloning technology featuring prominently in both The Mandalorian and The Bad Batch. And Project Necromancer, right? Some minor spoilers, well, not minor, I guess. Major spoilers for The Bad Batch, if you haven't watched it. But basically, they get involved with a secret Empire research facility that is carrying out something called Project Necromancer for Emperor Palpatine. And seems to be with the ends in mind of cloning Palpatine himself, because they are trying to figure out how to clone Force powers, essentially. The rain here is interesting. It's going up the dome here. For a second I thought that maybe it was a mistake, but now that I think more about it, it's probably because of how intense the wind is. It's pushing the water up. But yeah, I was not a fan of The Bad Batch, and was certainly not a fan of the Project Necromancer plotline. And what it felt felt like to me was Dave Filoni was, I don't know, trying to justify the sequel trilogy in The Rise of Skywalker when, there's the famous line at this point, or infamous rather, where Mariadoc Brandybuck says somehow Palpatine returned. Or sorry, that's Oscar Isaac that says that, right? And then Mary says, dark secrets known only to the Sith, cloning. Felt like the whole purpose of the Project Necromancer plotline was just to give us context for Palpatine cloning himself in Rise of Skywalker. But I thought that was a bad move because that movie sucked so much. There was no need to try to justify something that was so garbage. And by tying yourself to that film, you just kind of associate yourself with that trash and lower your quality by association. Now, if Bad Batch had actually been good on the merits, I still would have liked it, but I just didn't like Bad Batch even on its own qualities. I thought the characters were very boring, they were all, it was like you took a band of stereotype characters, right? The Bad Batch are all just the most broad, boring stereotypes. You have the big, strong, stupid guy. You have the socially inept techno guru. You have the remorseless, sociopathic sniper. You have the really cool hunter tracker leader guy. The moments of the show that I did find a little more compelling were when they started to introduce a bit more complexity of character into those stereotypes. Crosshair was the most interesting for me because he actually had quite a character arc. He got put into a very different position from the rest of the Bad Batch and, had to deal with a lot of inner conflict and had to actually change the character, the sort of stuff that makes characters interesting. But, I feel as though I'm a little bit on the out group with that show. I think it was more liked than my opinion on it. So I can recognize that I might be standing alone with that opinion. But yeah, that was during my off-ramp of Star Wars. I've talked before about how I sort of lost my connection to Star Wars in the past 5, 6 years, whatever. Mainly with the TV shows. The movies were really bad. The new new trilogy, but there were some bright spots and some redeeming features. But then the TV shows, for me, just kind of got worse and worse, and I had a lot of goodwill built up with Star Wars. It was something I loved since my childhood, and so I was willing to put up with a lot of crap just to keep up with the storyline and watch all of the new stuff. But it was around the time of the last season of The Mandalorian and Bad Batch Season 2 that my spirit finally broke, and I said, I do not have to watch all the Star Wars stuff anymore. And that was a very freeing thing for me, actually, so. We have a large room here. I'm not entirely sure what the function of this room even is. We have some chairs here. Some very like 60s modern chairs. And long tables, small circular consoles emerging from the ground. Yeah, I don't really know what this room is. And down here, we have a hallway in this glossy, smooth Kaminoan style. It's a very distinctive, clean style. I think these are clone embryos. I think. I'm not positive on that, but I'm pretty sure that's what we're looking at here. And, of course, we have a lot of clone storylines introduced in the Clone Wars TV show. And we've met many great characters among those clones. Fives, Cody, Rex, so on. There's obviously lots of good characters if you've watched that show. And down this hall, I believe, we progress deeper into the cloning facility. However, that is out of bounds for this version of the map, so we will have to stop here. Obviously, the attack so far has destroyed a few droids. We have some droid corpses here. It's not the quite right word, is it? What would you call the destroyed body of a sentient robot? Corpse doesn't feel quite right. But you need something a little more human than, wreckage, right? interesting that we can find some droid bodies around here, but we don't see any clone corpses as set dressing on the map. It's kind of eerie walking around an active battlefield like this with nothing going on, right? In the sense that, we see those Trident ships outside constantly landing and getting destroyed and falling into the ocean. And there are active fires burning and all that, but we don't see any actual battles, of course, because the other players are necessary to fill in that action. And it's just, there's just an eeriness, I suppose, to navigating an active battlefield where some of the signs of war still continue, but no soldiers actually fight. It's like you're walking around a Disney World theme park attraction, like Haunted Mansion or something, but there's no employees around or no other patrons, right? I feel like that would be kind of eerie if you were walking through some of those theme park places and all of the, electronics and animatronics and effects and audio cues and stuff were all happening, but you were completely alone. I guess that probably ties a little bit into the appeal of Five Nights at Freddy's, right? Something about the maybe inherent eeriness of animatronics and places like Chuck E. Cheese or whatever. When you're the only one there, I'm sure it's kind of creepy to be a security guard at a place like that, and you are walking around at night with your flashlight and you just sweep it over some mechanical rat up on a stage, and it's not doing anything, but just kind of scary, right? The whole Five Nights at Freddy's thing is kind of a blind spot for me. Just didn't follow those games, and I was young enough that I could have watched. I don't know who played them. Was it like Markiplier probably that made them blow up? But I just never got into it. I guess I think I'm a little bit older than the average Freddy's kid, although, maybe they're still, Freddy's games are still coming out, right? It's hard to know sometimes, like, what demographic is actually engaging with something, because, I think about, gaming YouTubers are playing Five Nights at Freddy's, they're playing the new one, but then their audiences probably aren't mostly like 30-year-old dudes. Most of the people watching Five Nights at Freddy's Let's Plays from Markiplier or whatever are probably like children. But then, I guess invoking the Markiplier name probably loops it back around to skewing older because Markiplier is so old at this point that people who watched him originally and might still watch him out of habit, nostalgia, loyalty, still just enjoying his personality. They're probably, on the older side now. I don't have any answers, but I did a few months ago get fed a few Five Nights at Freddy's like lore videos, and I watched a couple of them and was deeply surprised by what I saw. I had no idea the depth of what was going on in that game. The amount of goofy crap that is going down in Five Nights at Freddy's. But then I was thinking about my own childhood, right? And we all had our own thing, right? I feel like every generation of kids, it's just a new form of spooky stories that they get into, right? Kids my age liked creepypastas and stuff. And then the kids liked Five Nights at Freddy's and the SCP Foundation and the back rooms, right? Which I'm not saying is only kids that like that stuff. I know that obviously, the very well-written SCP articles are written by adults or young adults who have a passion for contributing to that stuff. But obviously, most of the people consuming backrooms content, for instance, right, are children. I have to assume that that's the case. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. And at the end of the day, I'm not standing in judgment or whatever. It might be funny to laugh at a little bit. When I was learning about some of the stuff going on in Five Nights at Freddy's, I did laugh because of how just over the top it was. But I don't ever want to fall prey to the notion of kids these days, right? Kids doing things wrong these days, or, they've changed in ways for the worse. I think there are occasionally moments where that's true, right? Probably kids growing up on social media, I have to believe that has made them worse. Not in a way that I'm saying is a moral failing or whatever, or that it's their fault, but I'm sure that is not a better environment to go through your developmental years in. But what I definitely don't stand with are people making fun of what kids are consuming these days and suggesting that it means they are, cooked, right? When people saw Skippity Toilet and that the kids liked Skippity Toilet and they were like, oh my god, these kids are cooked, look at the crap they're watching. Or, the memes that go around among kids like 6, 7. It's fine, right? It's not any different than what every generation of kids get up to. Not fundamentally anyways. I am old enough to remember kids laughing at Annoying Orange and Fred videos. And frankly, I think Skippity Toilet is a much higher tier of entertainment than Fred videos, so but anyway, pardon me for rambling so much. Thank you for joining me in my exploration of Kamino. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And until next time, please take care of yourselves, and I will do the same.